Okay, folks, this is Book Talk with Corp, and I'm your host. We have a great guest with us today. Brother, I am not pronouncing your last name properly. Steve, I got that down, Pat. How do I pronounce your last name?
Yeah, it's Pomper.
Pomper. So we have with us Steve Pomper. He's a retired Seattle, Washington police officer and author of 5 nonfiction books, including The Obama Gang. And that's the one book we're going to zero in on today during this brief interview. And I want to encourage our listeners, please go to nationalpolice.org. I went to it a couple of times, and it's got some great information on there, very useful information. As a matter of fact, I do plan on later today to copy some of that information off that website, nationalpolice.org, and I was going to mail it to a friend of mine. It's just really important information. Brother, 5 nonfiction works. When did you sleep again?
Well, the first ones I wrote in between 911 calls, when I was on the job still. I'd kind of fill in the gaps there and then get up early in the morning to write later at night. And wow. 3 of the books I've written are police related and 2 are Seattle history. So it kind of gave me a chance to kind of broaden my horizon and, of course, get to know the city a little bit better. And boy, I tell you, if I was going to write that same history book about Seattle today, it would be really different than what I felt about it back then.
Well, why do you say that? Why do you say that?
When I first moved to Seattle, it had a slightly left lean, and it's had that for a long time. I mean, it used to actually be a conservative city, way back, 50s, probably 40s, but it's had a conservative lean. My wife and I moved here in the 80s, and it was kind of a live and let live, vibe that was going on, even with the politics. You were conservative, fine. You were liberal, fine. And that's the way it worked. But it's gotten into a point where it's certainly not live and let live. It's got to a point like on my department where probably about a little bit over a decade ago, they started in earnest, indoctrinating police officers officially through, I used to call it indoctrination disguised as police training. And that's when it really started to hit me. And that's when that was a couple of years after I'd written my first books. And so that's when that kind of germed the book, Depolicing America. A street cop's view of the anti-police state, because I was seeing it firsthand. We were having Obama DOJ come after us and put a consent decree on us based on some bogus information that a Seattle University professor almost immediately debunked in public in the Seattle Times. Wow. And he even told the city, they should demand an apology from the DOJ and tell them to, hit the road, basically. So there's a lot of stuff going on that changed Seattle into, from live and let live to, we speak our mind, you cannot speak yours.
Mm-hmm. And so when you finally retired, did you, as you're moving closer to retirement, was you saying to yourself, well, I need to be careful about expressing my political views, my personal opinions?
Yeah, I kind of had to, because back in 2010, I wrote a series of articles for our union newspaper, protected by the First Amendment, off duty. And I criticized the forced indoctrination of police officers in the city of Seattle. And basically heads exploded. And after I'd gone on media to talk about the article I'd written, I'd been invited. I'd never solicited any interviews. They asked me to come on. I went on, spoke about it. And after what ended up being the last interview I did, I actually got a call to come into the precinct to talk to my captain. And apparently the chief had told him to order me not to talk to the media anymore. Wow. And then investigated me for over 7 months for writing an article that the chief publicly admitted I had a right to write. And so it was definitely done to keep me quiet, because we can't speak during an investigation while investigation's going on. So that was a chilling effect on the department.
Yeah. That's just chilling, period. You're a citizen.
Yeah.
To be called in by his employer.
Yeah. Yeah. I'd never been investigated in the department in my life. Every officer who works hard gets complaints, but I'd never had an investigation done like that until my own department for exercising free speech rights. So that was really that was a slap in the face, and part of what made me retire 10 years earlier than I would have. I'd still be working right now if things weren't the way they are in Seattle.
Wow, that really says something. And I also just want to bring up a side point here. Your wife is a public servant. Didn't she retire from the fire department?
She did. Snohomish County Fire Department. Yeah, she worked there 25 years. She was the first woman on the department in this area. So it was interesting, her rise up, but she just loved being what she called a fireman.
Right. But, I wanted to bring that up to my listeners. Here it is, this couple, public servants, putting their lives on the line on a daily basis. Brother, I ain't running to no burning building. Even to get my John Coltrane jazz albums, I ain't doing it. That stuff's dangerous.
Yeah.
And yet, that's pretty much what she was called to do. And, and I'm sure that you had some experiences as police officers, like when you respond. I always hear police officers say, man, I hate domestic violence runs.
Sure.
Is that something that you sometimes would feel or, responding to domestic violence runs?
Those are tough ones because you just never know, what you're running into, because a lot of times you'll have a situation where when you're first called, you get there and you've got one party against another party. And then somewhere in between, as they start to think about it, one party will say, oh, geez, maybe I shouldn't have called. Maybe I shouldn't. And they'll actually both turn against you. Or you'll have, or you'll have children involved, which makes it even worse. Then we have to consider, their safety, and then have to consider, okay, do all the elements fit to make an arrest, or just have someone leave the situation? And so that makes it a lot. I mean, when you see or hear of officers being killed, being ambushed, a lot of times it has to do with a domestic violence situation. When the officers show up, they're in the driveway, and somebody opens fire on them.
Man, and yet we have. So it seems like we have so many mayors of urban cities. It just seems they have this sort of a hostility, almost a hostility towards police officers. I mean, what do you think's going on with that? What's the reason behind that?
Well, you mentioned earlier about the National Police Association, which is at nationalpolice.org. And what I like about the organization that seems a little different than the others, and there's some good organizations out there, is that they specifically exist to help educate people on what the police do. Because I understand if some of the things we do, if I wasn't a cop and I looked at that stuff, I would say, yeah, that looks bad. Well, sorry, folks, use of forces look bad, and they have to look through what we're doing. And taking our oath and the amount that we go through to get hired, the scrutiny we go through, used to, I think, give us a certain benefit of the doubt, which I don't think exists anymore. And that's part of the reason that I wrote Obama Gang for the National Police Association, was to let people understand that this isn't just happening by accident. This isn't organic. This is planned. If the George Floyd incident hadn't happened, it would be something else. Because you have to wonder, and here's kind of something that really impacted me. In Seattle, we had two people running for city council, probably about a year before the George Floyd incident, and they were campaigning on increasing police officers. Then suddenly, in 2020, in a city 2,000 miles away, we have what I consider an anomaly happen in that city, and we're still unraveling that situation. And yet they come back to Seattle again, 2,000 miles away, and suddenly these people want to defund the police. The same people who campaigned on increasing the police, and nothing happened in Seattle at all to provoke anything, but they had to jump on that national bandwagon. And a lot of that comes from President Obama's My Brother's Keeper Alliance, which is fine organization for what it does in certain areas. But with regard to the police, what they do is they get mayors to sign on, and they've gotten over 100 or 300 to sign on, and with 10 of the biggest cities, and they promise to review use of force and then engage the public, basically get anecdotes from people from this community. We know how reliable that can be. Report the findings, and then reform the police. It doesn't say, and if you find something wrong, reform the police. It just says reform the police. And then that's when they get into the defunding and that sort of thing. And so we found out, that basically President Obama's been sitting at the top of this, anti-cop, organization and just coming after us, including the consent decrees that he put on almost 24 police departments when he was in power.
Folks, this is Book Talk with Corbin. I'm your host. We have with us today Mr. Steve Pomper. And go to the website, nationalpolice.org. Nationalpolice.org. Let me tell you something. It's a great website. I've been there a few times. I'm going back, and I'm putting out some good information. And brother, some of the articles you refer to, or some of the issues you refer to, are there articles on that website?
There are. In fact, we've got great writers, that have experience all over the place and from different levels, from my level as a patrol officer for 22 years to an officer, Steve Ozinski in Florida, who's a patrol officer there. So you got Florida, and then you've got another one that was in the Midwest, Betsy Bratner Smith,
Mm-hmm.
and then Chief Joel Schultz, who was a police chief, and who is a PhD, and they're all great writers. And in fact, Betsy does a blog for us at NPA, which is, and talks to a lot of folks that are very interesting. And so you go there and then there's the articles, and then there's everything that the National Police Association does, including writing amicus briefs for officers and police departments that, need some legal assistance across the country.
Okay. Well, we only got like a couple of minutes left, but I wanted to conclude those couple of minutes in mentioning your book again. Very important book. It's got about 39 pages, folks. This is a well documented book. This brother, I know he had to spend a good amount of time researching for this book. This is not a polemic. I mean, this brother's like a scholar. He's up there, Harvard University level scholar, putting this together. And the book is called The Obama Gang. Brother, you can get this at Amazon.com. Is that correct?
You can, yeah.
But can we also get it at nationalpolice.org?
And at my website, stevepomper.com.
Stevepomper.com.
Yeah. Okay. And then, and everything, it can get you, directed to those and navigated to where they sell the book. But yeah, Amazon, right now it's available in Kindle. And then in April, it'll be available in print. However, it's available for pre-orders right now at Amazon in print. So
fantastic. And I want to keep saying this to my listeners, get a hold of that book. On Book Talk with Corbin, we have interviewed officers in the past, officers here in Louisville. And, they always give us a perspective that, it's non-police people just don't have.
Mm-hmm.
We just don't have it. And, like there's one chapter there, I just would like for you to comment on it.
Yeah.
It's the chapter called Government Education / Critical Race Theory. What's that about?
Well, that's part of the overall package of coming after police. I mean, critical race theory is very anti-police. And it's interesting when the way we were even found that was tied to President Obama, that back when he was in Harvard, he was, I don't know if he was an actual acolyte of Derek Bell, but he admired him to the point that they show a video that didn't come out until after he had been out of office, of course. And where he's basically praising Derek Bell and saying people should listen to it. And he's the father, or what they consider the father of critical race theory, which basically says that if you're black, you're a victim. If you're white, you're a racist, and there's nothing you can do about it. So just live with it, that kind of thing. And it's interesting, too, that this Derek Bell was shown after Obama was out of office, that he had been a visitor there, some of the earliest visitors, like at least 3 times. So this was the connection that, if that doesn't show support for that critical race theory, which is now trying to invade all kinds of schools from all levels. Even, they want to teach kindergartners this stuff. Right. And so the anti-police notions that come out of that are so ingrained that how, if a kid grows up in a household, whether black or white, and they're hearing this stuff, they're kind of being conditioned to have a certain response. The white folks, guilt, and then the black folks, how dare you attack me for being black? I didn't get the raise. It's because, I'm a minority. I didn't get the position in school. It's because I got a C instead of an A. It's because of my race. That kind of thing. That's a sickness on society, I think.
Brother, that's one of the best summations I've ever heard on critical race theory.
Really
And
appreciate that.
I'm glad you put that in your book, and I'm glad you did this interview. More people have to hear what you're saying, listen to what you're saying. Get that book, folks, The Obama Gang. Get that book, The Obama Gang. Brother, thank you so much. I hope that sometime in the future we can have you come back and talk a little bit more in depth about the Obama Gang and your other books.
Anytime, Corbin. It's been an absolute pleasure.